In the positions you've held when you were in sales, you've done quite well. I mean, when you were at William Chris, you increased the revenue by 174%. That's quite impressive. What are you doing that other people are not? I mean, I know that oftentimes salespeople, whether it be a wine rep or a food rep, because I used to be a chef, so I would be on the receiving end, but not for wine sales, but fish purveyors or meat or whatever. And I used to, obviously you want somebody who's dependable, but I used to hate the people that would call, kind of like for any of us who have had an ex that doesn't get the point. So yeah. What I mean, you clearly had success, not just at William Chris, but.
Well, when I first started, they had told me you will never be held to a sales goal because we don't make enough wine. So we have about 3% of our wine production for you to go out and sell. So for me, I got to handpick every single account, which was awesome. I've never been able to do that in my life. So to be able to concentrate and really look for the consumers and the restaurants and the retail spaces that really fit our needs and our brand and what we stood for was literally the biggest piece and what got me started on the right foot. Because our wines weren't inexpensive and they still aren't. So you have to find the right customer that can sell that to the end consumer. So that was a big piece.
Kind of like you're not going to open a Hell's Angels bar in Beverly Hills.
Right, exactly. I mean, those are my favorite dive bars to go to, but it wasn't right for the wine. Because yes. I really had to look at, because I had so limited amounts of wine to sell that I had to make sure I was not only not wasting my time going to accounts that weren't going to move it as quickly, but also that it wouldn't just sit on the shelf and be around customers that really weren't interested in that style and type of wine.
That makes a lot of sense, but I guess I've never really thought about it. Okay.
Yeah. And then outside of William Chris, I've never considered myself a salesperson. When I got into distribution with Glazers many years ago, I think it's been about 12 years ago now, he had asked me to work for him for 8 months, and I was like, I'm not a salesperson. If I don't like something, I won't sell it because I can't stand behind it. And I'm a very honest person. And growing up with my stepdad in the car business, I got to understand sort of the bad side of sales when it comes to that. So I really wanted to make sure that was not my job, was to lie to people and to sell them something they didn't need just to meet a goal for my boss. But after talking me into it, I mean, I figured out that honesty is the best policy. And literally what I hang my hat on is assessing the needs of the customer and making sure it's a relationship. It's not just a sales transaction. And what I mean by that is going into a Hell's Angel bar. I'm not going to sell him a $40 bottle of Cabernet because, first of all, his clientele, that's not what they're drinking. They're probably going to want, no offense to Yellowtail, but they're going to want Yellowtail at $8 a bottle because they're not wine enthusiasts. You got to find what matches with your client.
If you were, we go to stores and we sell wine in stores. If you were teaching my staff to sell, let's say we have wine A, wine B, and wine C. Obviously, you need to know the product. But when you're out in stores and you're shopping and you've been approached by a brand ambassador, maybe they have a beer, wine, or liquor or whatever, what are some of the things that bother you? What would you say to, well, even if it's not my staff, to brand ambassadors? Say, here, these are the top 3 things you should do if you want to be more successful.
Yes. So is this selling to the consumer or is this selling to
consumer.
The buyer app?
The consumer.
The consumer. Body language is the biggest thing. Like we touched on earlier, if they're in a rush and they're walking super quick, you better say one word and try and catch their attention. Don't try and spit out a full sentence. Don't try and ask them a question because generally people in a rush are bothered by questions.
Yeah.
So I would say something like red wine and it's free. I don't like using word free, so complimentary is what I would have used. Or I would comment on their shoes or something that would grab their attention and not make them feel like they're being talked at. that. Just trying to gauge what they are wearing, what they may be interested in, that sort of thing. What else? Be mindful of their time. Always put yourself in their shoes. If you can do that quickly as you're seeing them walk by or watch them as they're looking at the shelf, put yourself in their shoes. What would you want to hear? What would you want to grab your attention or bring you over to the table? Anything that's visual too helps. When I would do in-store demos, I had a map of Texas because a lot of people aren't familiar with Texas wine. So having that piece of information for them to link their brain to because they don't know anything about it is always a big part. If you have free swag to give away too, that's always a plus.
Regardless of whether you're talking about selling wine to consumers or stores, just what is a general thing you have learned when it comes to wine drinkers in Texas versus California or vice versa, in general?
In general, wine drinkers in Texas like what they like. I've been doing
more kind of more set in a habit type thing.
Yes. I don't know how many times I get asked, I just want a cab or a chard. And that is not an exaggeration. People come into my tasting room to this day and still ask that. Events when I first started 4 years ago, same thing. They're like, I just drink cab or chard. So keep that in mind. Like we touched on earlier, find something that they can relate to. Do you drink Pinot Noir? Because this is what it's going to taste like. Or this tastes just like a cab, but you probably have never heard of the grape. Will you try it? See if you like it. You can dump it. No hard feelings if you don't like it. That's what we're here for. Always be encouraging to the consumer to encourage more education and try it and to be okay to not like it. Versus California, most Californians like California wine, to be very honest. And if I don't like to use the word snobs, but they seem to think that their palate is super refined because they're in California and they live in California. So they're exposed to some of the United States' best wines because that's the stereotype, right? It's hard to break in. Yeah, it's hard to break through what people like. I mean, that's a similarity between Texas and California and the consumer. They like what they like. So you have to find a way to break through that. Like when I moved from California to Texas, I brought all my California wines. Now that I've been drinking Texas wines for 3 years, I keep popping open some of my California wines that I adored. And now they're too heavy and they almost seem like they have a sweet characteristic to it because my palate has gotten used to Texas wines. So if you can somehow break into people's minds and let them know that this isn't typically what you drink, but remember the day when you started drinking sweet wines and now you're drinking some of the best cabs in the world, your palate evolves. So I always approach education-wise to get people to open their minds and their palates to new things.
Yeah, that's the approach I take. And I have found, in Texas, speaking of Texas, because people here are more creatures of habit, I find 9 times out of 10, people typically like a wine they originally thought they would not like.
Yes.
For example, I did a Sancerre once, and the woman, when she heard the word Sauvignon Blanc, no, I don't like grapefruit, I don't like tropical fruit. And then when she tried it, and I said, well, no, it's not like that at all. It is completely different. What you're referring to, actually what I said to her, as I said, oh, okay, so you know New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. And she said, yeah, how'd you know? I said, because that's the style of New Zealand. A Sancerre is practically devoid of fruit, a real one. And so I said, here, why don't you give it a try? If you don't like it, you reaffirm what you know. If you do like it, you discovered something else. She tried it, and not only did she love it, and she bought a bottle, but she was actually a bit baffled that Sauvignon Blanc could taste anything other than like grapefruit.
Yes.
And so she's like, I didn't know Sauvignon Blanc could taste different.
Yeah, and that's another piece of education that people don't realize. Like, they think they like a cab, but not all cabs taste the same. Every winemaker does something different. So not only where it comes from will make it different, the winemaker can make it different. There's so many different factors, and getting people to understand that sometimes is hard to do in such a short amount of time when you're trying to sell within 30 seconds to the customer that's walking in the grocery store and has to cook dinner for their kids. And that's why I always go with the approach of get it in their mouths. Don't say a lot. Get them to taste it, because that's what sells the wine. Once they taste it, still don't go into the description of the wine. Let them tell you what they think. Letting the consumer talk is a big piece, because then you learn so much rather than you talking at them.
That's true, because we do tend to get wrapped up in our own stories. These are the grapes. This is the region, and blah, 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 blah. It was made by nuns 1,000 years ago, whatever.
Yep.
Actually, one trick I learned is just from doing it so much is, like, if you come up to me and I have a buttery oaky Chardonnay and you say you don't like buttery oaky Chardonnay, I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to downplay the hell out of those qualities you dislike, because not only do most people not even know what they like, most people don't know how to describe what they like, and on top of that, most people misdescribe what they like. I mean, I had a bone-dry Sancerre once, and somebody said, it tastes kind of sweet, because they picked up a hint of fruit. Because people equate fruit and sweet, but they're not synonymous. So, but I always downplay, and then I tell my staff this, and they say, isn't that kind of sneaky? I said, maybe it is, but remember, all you're doing is making them feel good about tasting before they taste. If they don't like it, you're not forcing them. It's not like you put a TV on eBay, but it's really a microwave, and then the customer gets it, and I ordered the plasma TV, not the plasma microwave. But so that's one thing I always do. I always liken it to a blind date. I've been on 2 blind dates. The first one sucked. The second one was great. And most people won't go on a blind date because of, we all know stories or we've been on them. And the example I give is, if you want to set somebody up on a blind date, you're not going to have any success unless you make them feel good about that person before they meet them. So I use that with wine. I want to make them feel good about the wine before they taste it.
People want to hear what they want. Sometimes they want to be told what they want and what they like. And that's, I think, where tasting notes were born. Because you can have that same wine in front of you, and one person's going to taste green apple, the next person is going to taste honey. Everybody's palate is different. And I always like to tell consumers that's one thing that almost always comes out of my mouth. I never have a script, but I always say everybody tastes something different. If you'd like me to describe what I taste, I'm happy to. But sometimes people like that, and you can usually gauge that by their body language or how they're reacting to it. If you notice they're just being quiet and they're kind of in between, then I'll start going into some tasting notes, because sometimes that's what sways their purchase.
And you're also the founder of the Texas Wine Revolution. Do you want to just touch on that? I mean, I want to make sure for something like that definitely deserves some attention.
Yes. So I started that with William Chris Vineyards. That was my first job in Texas. And the whole basis behind it was to be a nonprofit, also to promote Texas wine, and specifically 100% Texas grown wine. So I ran that whole thing. It no longer is in existence at this time. It may make another appearance here soon, but it has not been going on for about 2 years now. Just for lack of assistance. It was just me running the entire festival, and it was hard to do. 1,200 person festival. It was great, and we made history. We were the first Texas festival to house that many 100% Texas made wines, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So the basis was to promote Texas wine, and how we figured it out is we couldn't just have one varietal poured at that, because it would narrow down to maybe 5 people who had 100% Texas of that varietal. And then we're like, okay, well, what if we did just 100% Texas wineries? Well, come to find out, there wasn't too many of those. There's a lot of Texas wineries that also utilize California grapes or Washington grapes, that sort of thing. So in order to not alienate and still get the message across about 100% Texas wines, we decided to do rosé. So we invited all of the Texas wineries to participate. If you had 100% Texas grown rosé, meaning no other fruit from any other state was in that bottle, you could come and you could pour it for all of the guests. The first year, it was awesome. It ran for 3 years. Like I said, hopefully we'll bring it back again. We just need to get a good solid board and committee going.
Thank you for your time. I think we went a bit over. I apologize for that.
No, all good. It's crazy that we actually talked 3 years ago, but pretty
small
cool.
world.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Thank you so much.